Great to see some familiar faces from long ago. Hi, Jean Tucker.
Justus, where are you?
Where's Dean?
Hello, Samuel.
Okay, we'll begin in a moment, everyone. 1 minute.
Rabbi.
How's it?
Hello, can I say hello to Jaime? I see him sitting with Paul there in the corner, watching with a cup of tea.
Of course.
Tell him there, I'm saying hi. Chaim sitting there in the corner with Paul.
Colin.
Henry. Yes.
Colin Shapiro, is that
Enjoy your tea and cake. Hello, Mikey. Yeah, boy. L'chaim.
Barry Cohen. Where are you, Barry?
Can you talk back?
Barry's there.
Is he there?
Barry's there. Paul's there.
Colin, what's Barry's name on your screen?
Barry Blumenthal, I think.
Yeah.
There's Barry Cohen's there. Barry J. Cohen is there. You're looking at him.
I'm just looking. Okay, Barry J. I'll look there.
From Dartmouth Road.
Okay.
Maureen with the beach.
I've got Barry Blumenthal,
Hello, Henry.
but that's not Barry Cohen.
It's Henry Brown. Yes, hello. Hello, Gene.
Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody, and Barry, can you unmute yourself? Okay, mute all.
Muizenberg.
Okay, Barry, if you're there, Barry Cohen, can you unmute yourself so I can see who you are on the screen? There's too many people here, and I don't know what you're called on the screen.
I'm here, just trying to set up my cell phone.
Okay, there, Jenna Cohen. Okay, there we go, Jenna Cohen. I see. Okay. Okay, so are we ready to begin, folks? I think we are. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming here. I can see there's people again from around the world. So to the early morning people in California, to the late night owls in Australia, to people dodging, missiles in Israel, to people dodging taxis in Johannesburg, to the ones enjoying beautiful Cape Town and Muizenberg. Welcome you all once again. Obviously, I don't know everybody. Whoever it's your first time, my name is Ryan Newfield. I'm helping out the Muizenberg Shul, and it's great to see you all here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time speaking myself. I'm more interested in the speakers. So without further ado, we've got 3 great speakers, and I'm going to start with introducing the first speaker. Before I do that, once again, just a huge thank you to all the previous speakers, Leonard, Henry, Colin. I think I've seen you guys here, Gerald, we had Mervyn and Ruth. So thank you all the previous speakers, and we're going into the third speakers. Barry Cohen, who's on the screen here, Jenny Cohen, is talking about stories and more of school characters from the years 1967 to 1970. Just a little bit about Barry. Whoever didn't see the flyer, he's a little bit like me, or I'm rather a little bit like him, a little bit of a traveler. Barry's lived all over the world, in New Zealand, Australia. Right now he's living in Hout Bay. He was in a Muizenberg boy from 1952 to 1978. Following law articles at C&A Friedlander, he relocated abroad, worked at Chelsea Records in Wellington and Sydney, developed a video franchise chain with his brother-in-law in Queensland with over 68 stores. Wow, mazel tov. Launched a lottery scratch card for the Red Cross in South Africa and Botswana. Launched Fantasy League Super Sport Dream League in South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia. So you obviously are a sports fanatic as well. Launched Springbok supporters clubs worldwide. Need I say more? CEO of South Africa Cancer Association, co-launched the South African Golf Museum and Southern Africa Golf Hall of Fame, presently an author writing his 6th book, married Renee Bailing, formerly from Milnerton, Herzliya. They have two children, Jenna in Australia, Rory in Stellenbosch, and a number of awards, amongst them being a scratch golfer. A lot of respect over there. I don't play golf, but I watch it. And on that note, you are welcome to tell us some stories. I'm just going to make you the spotlight. Go ahead, Barry. It's all you.
All right. Hi, guys.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to chat. First, David, who lived around the corner in Yarmouth Road, and his father would lift me to and from golf at Clovelly. The last time I saw you was when I was 15, and you came to persuade my parents to let my somewhat wild sister, Lindsay, go to Baytar camp. And your mother, Doppy, was in the book club with my mom, Leslie. We lived in Dartmouth Road, and across the road was Barry and Ian Blumenthal, and together with their dad, they taught me to play cricket in the road. The Udelmans next door telling me to keep quiet on the one side, Theodore and Jerome on the other side, Adamstein. Other families in the road with the Castons, Gita and Brenda Kay, Gerald Musicant and his brother with their gym in the garage at the other end, Stan, Kevin and Matthew Block with his boxing setup, with Michael and David Liebrecht on the corner. At the top of the road, Angela Strubis and Barry or Sugi, the mathematical whiz kid, Matti, Rosie and Rika Aladeth, Stan Boerbates, Alan and Lynn Kay, Margaret and William Katzen. Likewise, so many Jewish families in Yarmouth Road and around the corner like Stan or Doves Davis and his sisters Marlene and Annette, Howard Oblowitz, Harold Spiro, and of course, down Yarmouth Road, Stephen Errol and Linda Geffen, Cedric Kushner, the Franks, and of course, Colin Shapiro, who lived behind me. Well, didn't realize there were so many. The one thing about many of us is we stay in touch via Facebook and WhatsApp and Skype, like Martin Glucklick, Jonathan Pinshaw, Malcolm Seaman, Danella, Margaret, and Colin Shapiro. For starters, I never went to Muizenberg School. Instead, Sachs from Sabay. But Wally Gordon came to Sachs, so I had him. I was a third generation Sachs, and my Uncle Lionel built the school in Camps Bay, the schools at Weinberg and Greenpoint, as well as the Jewish Old Age Home. He married the beautiful Joan Shaper from Cromer Road, whose brothers Jerry and Hal went abroad. Hal was the famous lyricist, Jerry, equally famous surgeon who turned down a knife. Hal had 5 West End plays, including Treasure Island, and many hit records such as Softly When I Leave You and film scores like Rocky. He hosted the British Oscars 4 times, but fell out with Barbara Streisand. He returned to Cape Town, where he was my golf partner, but I had to teach him to count. My sister Lindsay led the way from Muizenberg Junior to high school at Sans Souci, Newlands, and many of the girls followed, catching trains to and from school, racing to get back in time for a surf or touch rugby. It wasn't fair that kids at Muizenberg High were already surfing at least 2 hours before we got back. I used to run every day with Rodney, Jeffrey Melmid, and Alan Kay, Howard Oblowitz. Some others were Ian Melmid, Lucky, Reiki, Matteo Conner, Bernard Siff, the Sussmans, Roy, Mark and Paul, Shaggins, Roger, Peter, Karen, Leon and Jackie Cohen, Max Frank, who headed up the Cape Town Psychic Club, Angela, Jonathan, Jack and Annette. Some of those going to the army with me from Muizenberg included Martin Rosen and Malcolm Seaman. And there were others like Adrian Gerson, cousin David and his brother. Their father, Scotty, would pack us boys and girls into his van and drive us into the Hellenic ground to watch soccer on a Friday evening. No one paid. The snake pit was central to our existence. Margaret Katzen and Jess Schneider with beach bats Gerald Music and Bok and touch rugby, and I was the Patpachang. When we left the beach, we'd turn to Gerald and ask him to turn off the lights before leaving. Of course, Gerald captained Muizenberg Old Boys and Cedric Muizenberg Spurs, and when they played, up to 20,000 people pitched to watch. I'm not sure why we didn't get sunstroke in the sandpit. Some of the crowd were at the corner, like my sister Marilyn Israelson, Brenda Bloch, and Sharon Davidson. The boys also served for Western Province, including Ruddy Lemkus, Martin Rose, and Colin Resnick and Howard Gold. Then just the other side of the promenade was the large bop stage with the windmill, when you bopped and twisted from 5 to 7 p.m. There were exercise classes early in the morning on the lawns. Oh dear. I hope I'm not going to lose power. On the lawns and trampolines in front of Alma, Emil, Teddy, and Philip Reese's home, which I sometimes looked after. Of course, Vic Davis was the central entertainment, but then there were variety concerts on a Sunday night at the Pavilion, and Max Colley, who hypnotized Cedric Kushner and had him running around barking like a dog. So many memories. Doctors with Shapiro, Henson, and Weinberg before him. My father Henry started the scouting movement, likewise Third Green and Seapoint, but soon taken over by my uncle Lionel and Bertie Stern, and then Henry Shagham. I had law officers between Bertie and Dickie Friedlander. When I was studying law, Bertie was in his 70s, maybe older, was at a uni with us, also studying, an amazing man. He helped found Falls Bay Rugby Club, and together with Philip Herbstein. My dad was also involved. Did you know there was a golf course in the 30s opposite our nursery school? I cannot leave the Schwartzes with their 9 boys in the road above the shul. Their father built Cinnabar in the Cape Town Municipality building. His brother made the most amazing large railway set out of matchsticks, and Mrs. Schwartz was a psychologist with an armful of degrees whom my parents sent me to. Pity they never listened to a prognosis. I've left the best for last. Girls. My era, my sisters had some lovely girls. Melanie and Michelle Rosen, Pam Heppel, Rika Aladev, Liz Kay, Barbara Adler, who in a fight my sister tore off her dress, yikes. Kay Glucklick, Yeti Meyer, and Miss Teen, Lynella Lemkus, such a nice girl. Hilary Wolf, the first girl I danced with, Sister Joanne, Linda Smith, Terrell Sachs, Mel Spiro, Yeti, Chesna Gordon, Jennifer Berghouse, and other beauties. Leo's with Hilton Jonas in charge, assisted by Veronique Sariano, included summer camps for the underprivileged at the door of Fort Cohen. And when I was 19, I put on a pop concert with Leo's on the island adjoining the Tops's boathouse. Instead of 500 coming, 5,000 pitched. There were other identities, such as going to get amazing bread from Bella Rosen and Mrs. Spiro's cooking. But the best-known Muizenberger was Ralph Levy, known as R16 at the Empire. He was my uncle, and while I was at uni, I used to take him for drives to Scarborough twice a week. Mentally, he was 6, and people were very cruel towards him. Who remembers Colin Goodman set up a nightclub opposite the Empire? And of course, I can't leave out Norman's for hot dogs and a haircut sitting on a plank with plenty of brill cream. Of the younger generation, there was Denise and Mervyn Israelson, Johnny Gordon, Barbara Salas, Colin Shapiro, Gavin Jonas, Charlene Laboff, Derek Berghouse spring to mind. Many of us didn't have money, but it wasn't important. We had everything we could want: the beach, friends, movies, and holiday romances in summer. If we needed money, we would collect bottles and take them to Crowder's or sneak into the Empire at interval. The most wonderful thing about growing up in Muizenberg was, like was that it was like a big family, with the parents looking after us. Houses and fridges were open to us. Of course, the shul would hand out slabs of chocolates at festivals, and the challenge was how to get back into the queue for another slab. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you so much. Everyone's giving you a virtual clap. Once again, I encourage everyone to write a chat. If anyone wants to write anything, I'm sure there were lots of names there that people knew. Barry, you did say that you didn't pay for the soccer matches on Shabbos. Well done. That was the thing that the rabbi heard. Also, just to let you know, Barry, my son, I said it to Dr. Rosenberg last week, that my son is probably the youngest Jew living in Muizenberg today, and he does have a golf set. Just saying that. He does have a golf set already. Thank you. We got some great comments from you. Thank you. That was very, very interesting. Lots and lots of names. We're going to go to the next speaker. The format of this is we'll go through all three speakers, and at the end, everyone can say some comments. If anyone, I encourage everyone to write down your thoughts after each speaker, because you're going to forget it, because there's going to be so many memories coming. And then at the end, everybody can share whatever you wish from the three speakers. Next speaker, Hedy Davis. I think you're under Jeffrey Davis over here, so I'm going to make you the spotlight. Let me just quickly find you. Jeffrey Davis, add spotlight. Okay. So, Hedy, before you unmute yourself, I just want to read your quick bio. Hedy Davis, her topic, she had lots of topics she could talk about. And I asked her to talk about this one in particular, Introduction to the Hotel Industry of Muizenberg, the Imperial Hotel, Details of the Family Kosovo. Hedy Davis, author of Muizenberg, The Story of the Shtetl by the Sea, was the editor and chief researcher of the Memories and Muizenberg exhibition, which traveled its way around the world. The exhibition was put together quite hurriedly from the time she came onto the team with her photographer friend, John T. Peters, who revived and refreshed literally hundreds of photographs from which a selection was made. It is John T.'s fine work that enhances the photographs, many decades old, that are part of the story she tells. But there were enormous gaps in the material collected. They had at that stage 115 so-called memoirs, and she was aware of that and collected over another 400 memoirs. And to this day, ex-Muizenbergers write to her, and she still helps them put together their personal memoirs together. The book has become a rarity, but she has no plans to ever go through the process of self-publishing again. At the Richmond Book Festival some years ago, she was given the title of Literary Warrior by fellow book writers by the way she had achieved the sales of the book to reach bestseller status. Hedy, once again, thank you so much for agreeing to speak. We all look forward to what you have to say, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for asking me to speak. I have two thank yous to make before I even start. The one is Joan Shaper Cohen, who passed away recently, and the generosity that she showed me, giving me so much original material, which had been collected by her own mother, and the moral support and the love she gave me. And my dear, dear friend, Elaine Saxon, who inspired me more than anyone can imagine. Both have passed away. May their dear souls rest in peace. I see so many friends when I run through the names. There's Jean, there's Monica, there's Lolita, there's Iona, there's Henry. People one remembers from many, many years ago. And time just, where has it gone? As always, I thank John T. Peters, who produced the magic on the photography. And amongst them, there is Sarah Mason, somewhere in the English countryside, who sparked the interest in her great-great-grandparents, Isidore and Rosa Hirsch. And together with, thank you, you've made me bigger. I was bashed last 2 weeks ago. I've had my cataracts done, so reading is not easy at the moment. So there is Sarah Mason, who absolutely insisted that we look into her great-great-grandparents, Isidore and Rosa Hirsch. And together we went on a journey with all the fascinating stories that are in the chapter 1 of their achievement. And that brings me to why Muizenberg. Isidore and Rosa Hirsch were German immigrants. They met in Port Elizabeth and married. They didn't know each other before then. They came to Cape Town. This was 1880. And they found this barn-like structure in Muizenberg for sale. Muizenberg at that time had absolutely nothing but a stream of crystal clear water that ran all year round, where animals that were drawing transport wagons headed for Simonstown, a military outpost, could be watered and rested, while the drivers overnighted at this Farmer Pick's Inn that boasted clean beds, no fleas. That was quite a commendation. So, besides that there was a shabby building that had been the military puss haste. There were a few whaler cottages, and here and there, a house, a farmhouse. What made Isidore take a chance and buy Farmer Pick's Inn and turn it in what we will remember as the Grand Hotel? It was sheer guts and instinct that Muizenberg, the sea, the flay, and the mountain had potential to draw people to visit. Fortuitously, it was only 2 years later that the railway line was extended from Cape Town to Muizenberg, making the glorious spot with its marvelous swimming, the wonderful luft, and the beauty accessible to the masses. I'm sorry, I have to put on glasses. By the time Hirsch left Muizenberg, he had built a second hotel, and that one was known as Hirsch's Temperance Hotel, and it stood on the site of the Marine Hotel. So that meant when you came into Muizenberg, what did you see? First, the 2 hotels built by Hirsch. In the village itself, he built a set of 4 maisonettes. They're at the top of Melville Road. They're still standing there. If you have a chance to go inside, you will see wonderful, wonderful floors, broad stairway going upstairs. And the people who live there are very, very proud. They were completed in 1884, the 4 cottages. They're actually duplexes. So the second hotel, the Hirsch's Temperance Hotel, would become the Marine. Why Muizenberg? By the year 1900, Muizenberg was being advertised as the colonial Brighton. And then when in 1903, Cecil John Rhodes died, the name of Muizenberg reverberated around the British Empire and beyond. His death was a great event. The rabbi has asked me to speak about the foundations of the hotel industry. And in my research, I was sitting there one day and I was reading the memoir of Duffy Lazarus, grandmother of David. And I found that he mentioned that she had mentioned a great-grandmother. Well, nobody recalled that in South Africa, but in Israel, her sister Muriel and my childhood friend Jennifer, got together, went through all the old photographs, and of course there's this one classical photograph in the book of the 3 children. Her name was Matilda Kate. She became Cohen, and she was running the St. Elmo's in 1906. She came as a widow. I mean, what a brave soul to make her way to South Africa, to find Muizenberg and to find a little hotel that she could run. When this happened, I got an email from Johnny, David's brother, and he wrote, "What a coup, Hedy, Mazel tov. I knew you wear the laurels of the historian gracefully and modestly, but you deserve real acclaim for the whole thing you have achieved. I'm not a historian per se, but a very thorough researcher based on my master's study of the South African poet Arthur Nortje, who died under very strange circumstances in Oxford." So here we have a setup where Muizenberg is beginning to draw people. And at first it was not particularly Jewish. And yet they came in their hundreds. How many hundreds? We're going to debate at the end. They came primarily from certain villages. It happened like that in Pretoria. It happened like that in every Jewish community. You had friends, you knew someone there, they were looking out for you. You could stay with them when you arrived, and that's how they got to a place like Muizenberg. But there was another reason. They came with great hopes. And there was Mrs. Kosovo. Her husband had worked, slaved to bring them out, and she knew that Oranjezicht was the place to be. She got there, she actually bought out Krafchik's boarding house, but it was too expensive, and it wasn't a holiday resort. She sent her daughter Sue one summer. She rented a house in Muizenberg and sent her 15-year-old daughter all alone, a daughter whom she had taught everything she knew about keeping a hotel. And this young girl made a success of the boarding house that summer. And that decided Mrs. Kosovo that she would try and borrow money. She found money, and she found the last plot in the village. It was a plot where the hotel stood, not the corner, the next plot. And it was a plot that had a mountain of sand on it. Before she could even start thinking of building, that everybody who built in Muizenberg dumped their sand there. So now she had to get rid of all the sand. And she had a very modest budget. And she built this first hotel that she called the Imperial. I think they worked day and night, the Kosovars. They took turns. There were more children than most people realize. There was a youngest daughter who, when she was about 13, there was a visitor from Joburg, and he came to her and he said to her, "Here's a tikkie. When you turn 16, phone me." Well, she was smitten there and then. And I met Ethel Bloch in her 80s. She's still alive, but she's not well. And I really dedicate this to her because I spent many, many afternoons with her. We did many interviews. She didn't want to be recorded. I had to write everything down and type it up, and then she would read it, and then she'd change her mind. And we put together the story of the Kosovo family. Ethel, even though she got married at 18 and left Muizenberg, much to her mother's great sadness, maintained the connection in that she became the secretary of the hotel. She did the hotel bookings, she did the invoices, she paid the clientele, all from from Johannesburg. And you must know that in those days, you didn't just pick up a phone and make a call. It was very expensive. So everything was done by post. And Ethel told me this remarkable story of how each child was given a niche, a place where they could fit in, and how each child had to do what the best they could and what was in the interest of the family. And just before the war years, the grey house that stood on the corner of Alexander and Church came up onto the market. It was the plot next door to their new little hotel. And it was called the Spook House. I don't know if the rabbi knows what is a spook. The ghost house.
Yeah.
And she tore down this grey monstrosity. And even though it was war years and you couldn't build, you weren't allowed to build, you had to get permission to build, she built what was a series of flats with permission and the promise that after the war, when the returning soldiers came back and they wanted to live in Muizenberg, they could buy a flat and move in there. Well, when they came back from the war, the last place any of those soldiers wanted to live was Muizenberg. So Mrs. Kosover had a win-win situation. She had the hotel and she had the annex, or what she called Imperial Court. It still doesn't touch on how so many, and I have listed over 100 names of hotels. Don't forget that some hotels changed names 3 or 4 times. How the popularity of Muizenberg grew. And then we come to this absurd figure of 600 Jewish families lived in Muizenberg. Yes, but not all at one time. Some came and some went. And I sat down with shul records one month. And what I did was I went through the minutes very carefully. And I found that round about 1955, there was talk of a new shul. There were a new shul for 1,400 people. Can you imagine if you were stuck with that, Rabbi Ryan? A shul for 1,400 people. They had, it was quoted at £40,000, and it would cover both the stands, where the shul is and where the little rocha room is. At the AGM, Mr. Weinreich pointed out that if it was found there was a declining population in Muizenberg, that would be ridiculous. And even the enlarged to the scheme to enlarge the shul should be abandoned. By 1956, the shul was in a dire situation. Non-payment dropped. And from 297 to 307, membership had fallen. Only 256 members paid up. It was never a community of 600 families. There was another way I could check that. The ladies had minutes for their, what do you call it, Ladies Guild. This is interesting for Jean. The Ladies Guild charged 2 shillings and 6pence. And there wasn't a woman in Muizenberg who would let her pride down and not be a member of the Ladies Guild. They had 4 different groups in Muizenberg. They worked through the war years. They continued onward. And if there were only 250 odd members in the shul, and only 250 odd members of the Ladies Guild, I still don't see 600 families. Now, in 1950, there was talk of admitting ladies to the shul committee. We're going back 80 years. It's, 80 years, yes, 70 years. Talk of letting ladies to the shul committee. At that time, in 1950 or thereabouts, Rabbi Weinberg mentioned he couldn't keep a minyan going during the winter from 600 families or 250, 300 families. Maybe over a period there were more families, but they came and they went. In 1955, the ladies again asked to admit 2 members of the Ladies Guild to serve on the shul committee. After all, the men loved their bruchas. The men loved every Saturday they thanked the Ladies Guild. Every meeting they thanked the Ladies Guild. And now the shul committee said, the Ladies Guild have no standing. The resolution will not be placed on the agenda. There must have been a ruckus in Muizenberg during the year. In 1956, Ms. Dalmas, Friedman, and Lee were allowed to serve for 1 year and they'd see how it go. It was the first time that the ladies even went to the meeting. Mrs. Fanny Weinreich took the opportunity to pay a special tribute to Rabbi Weinberg, for his sermons were crisp and short and always interesting. Ladies made an impact from the beginning, from the day they could. In 1945, Nosan, end of World War II, there were 300 members. By 1951, there were 412 members, and from then on, there was a decline. My figure of 450 Jewish householders, maximum, in 1957. In 1967, the shul members were 419, about a third of which never paid, or more. By 1974, that number had dropped to 311. So I hope I've made my point, because this has been annoying me for years. People have come up to me and said, you know, there were 600 families in Muizenberg, but you didn't mention that. So there we go. I must tell you that if you're looking for a copy of the book, don't look at Gumtree. It's been given a 5-star rating. It's a clean book in excellent condition. It is listed as first edition, 2014. And a friend phoned to find out how much they were asking and was told offers on 1,200 Rand would be considered. This for a 250 Rand paperback. No, I think there's something very wrong with those statistics. The rest of the hotels you'll have to read about in the book. I'm sorry, I've run out of time, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Hedy, so much. Thank you, Hedy, very, very much. Definitely, I learned a lot. And one of the comments of someone that I know was that he'd like to go on a tour of Muizenberg with you. And just letting you know, he drives around Muizenberg on a motorbike. So maybe you can have a motorbike tour of Muizenberg with him, Hedy. Thank you very, very much. And one other point that I was thinking is, you mentioned, you know, to sponsor a kiddush was 2 shillings and a pence. So Jean, I don't know if now's the time to ask people to sponsor 2 pennies and a shilling for a kiddush. I'll let you do that next week, but everyone can, you know, start thinking if they want to contribute to what Muizenberg is today. There's more than one way to do that. So thank you, Hedy, for just all those, you know, insights and for the history. And I do hope to listen to you more and definitely get hold of that book if I can. Going to our third speaker, David Lazarus. David, I hope that you're there. I'm going to read the introduction for you, and then we'll go to your speech. David has a poetic topic, Oh, Those Wide Open Spaces and the Luft. Now, I know what's spooky in the dark, but I don't know what the Luft is. So I'm waiting for David to explain that to me. Born in Muizenberg, 1944, youngest of 3 brothers, attended Muizenberg junior and high schools, lived on his bicycle throughout his school years. Obsessive beach bats and tennis player, passionate about animals, nature, and wildlife. Studied classical piano from age 9, 3 performances with Cape Town Symphony Orchestra. Wow, amazing. Joined Beitar when he was 12, remained committed throughout his life. Don't know if he knew Colin Shapiro, maybe we'll hear that. Left Muizenberg April 69 to follow a marketing career, remarried in Muizenberg Shul. Sorry, I missed it. After retiring in 2006, managed Sea Point Ratepayers Association for 7 years, heavily involved with the Cape Zionist Federation, prolific letter writer defending Israel, Kol HaKavod. Voluntary records audiobooks for tape aids for the blind, 13 to date. Yesher Koach as well. Great speakers, great bios. Now I'm going to you, David. Let's hope that your audio works.
So as I speak to you now, thanks, Ryan. Well, all our guest presenters have spoken with such love and warmth about our village by the sea, or shtetl, as Hedy calls it in a wonderfully nostalgic book, that I'm wary of repetition, especially the names of the families who all played such a memorable role in our lives. I mean, listening to you, Mr. Cohen, sir, rapping all those names off was just something amazing, and all the streets. But of course, each of us has been impacted in unique, personal, and very individual ways. So in advance, I want to apologize for any overlap with the other speakers or any memory errors on my part. Certainly no offense meant, as we're all such a close-knit community. For me, it all started in Cromer Road at number 2 Oblivitz Flats. Harris Isaacs was above us. The Kirschners were next to us. The Galanskys were opposite, though I do remember them better when they lived in Church Street. Further down Cromer Road, Mossy Gold, the Eismans, the Shermans, and later the Lemkes family. Same side as us, separated by a field, were Colin Rosenberg and his sisters, who lived upstairs, with Roger Tobacco and his family downstairs before they moved to Clevedon Road. Then Harold Shaper. And down at the corner of Cromer Road and Flay Road, that famous light blue building housing the Michaels family, the Herbsteins, and if I remember correctly, Harold and Barry Selby, before they moved to their newly built home at the corner of Wherry and Flay Road, opposite Pelican Park. In later years, the field between Oblivitz Flats and Albertine Road was built upon, and Alan Pick and his family lived there. Alan and his sister Michelle, Mimi, were chanichim in my Muizenberg Beitar group. I don't know Mimi's life story, but Alan, who was really mischievous, inherited his dad's butcher skills to become the founder of Miva Me, then Al's Grill, followed by his now very famous and international butcher and grill chain of grill house restaurants. That other field, by the way, between the Lazarus and the Rosenbergs, was kept open and spacious to allow the sun to shine through our windows. But this was only due to our continued toppling of the for sale sign that was regularly re-erected there by J.D. Lear, the auctioneer. He never did catch us, and the property was only sold and built upon after we moved. Cromer Road was a real collector's item of Musie's characters, some of whom have been mentioned already and have become luminaries here and worldwide. Mr. Galansky was the shul's choir master. Dennis Herbstein became a successful journalist for the London Sunday Times. Harold Shaper, whom you've heard about quite a lot already, and who adopted the name Hal, whose musical Harvest Champagne was presented at the Talmud Torah Hall. Ryan, you never did get to see that. That was a great place, the Talmud Torah Hall. He later went on to become a successful songwriter and song publisher in London. His biggest hit, as you've already heard, was writing the English lyrics for Softly As I Leave You. Leonard Weinreich, our award-winning London advertising creative director, and of course Henry Brown, who I see has disappeared from my pictures here, but whose book, A Lawyer's Odyssey, was recently published in South Africa. And Roger Tobacco, now a successful accountant in London, hosts an annual Muizenberg get-together every New Year's Eve, which includes my eldest brother Frank and Leonard and Henry. You could call Roger's North London house in Muswell Hill Musie's Hill. They all still meet to celebrate each other's birthdays, and that's a lifetime of Muizenberg friendship for you. Frank has also made a name for himself in theatrical circles in London and New York with his West End and Broadway musical, A Day in Hollywood, A Night in the Ukraine, in which he also performed. In fact, He was nominated for a Tony Award for the score he composed for the show. Cape Townians probably know Frank best for his musical adaptation of Beverly Nichols' children's book, The Tree That Sat Down, which was staged at the Little Theatre for 2 weeks to rave reviews. Interestingly, Frank's acting career started in a children's play at that same Talmud Torah Hall when he was 11, and another luminary, Margaret Boyle, was 6. A few years later, they appeared again, still at the Talmud Torah, with Patricia Kahn, now also part of the cast, playing Frank's sister. Maggie and Frank eventually teamed up to present a local comedy show, Maggie and Frank, which they eventually performed in several countries before Margaret created her own one-woman show. Patricia Kahn's parents, Hedy, ran the Atlantic Hotel. Pat became first the mayoress and then the mayor of Cape Town. Her cousin was Clive Hershorn, whose parents ran the Rio Grande Hotel. And that's the one that you have on top of the 3 hotel pictures every time you do the Muizenberg Musees flyer. Clive became a theatre critic and a features writer for London's Sunday Express. By the way, Hedy, are you listening? My grandparents on my mom's side, Florence and Ernest Hart, ran the Victoria Hotel at Muizenberg Station. The hotel is now demolished and replaced by a parking area where Doffy and her sisters grew up. One sister, by the way, Phyllis Hart, was a teacher at Muizenberg Junior School. My other parents, Hetty and Chaim Lazarus, who lived next to the railway line behind Lily Trapler's store, and where we spent many after-shul Shabbat meals and sleepovers, first lived in Cork Bay, where Chaim and his brother built the Olympia Hotel, managed by my gran. Before they moved to Muizenberg, my dad, Louis, always traveled to work in Cape Town by train from Cork Bay, and Doffy would wait for his regular train to pass so that she could wave to him from the hotel window whilst he was still courting her. That had to have been love at first sight. My dad instilled in me a sense of wonder and respect for and appreciation of the great outdoors. And Muizenberg absolutely epitomized those wide open spaces, the fresh, clean, pure, rich in oxygen sea air, the Luft. Like Reverend Frank, my dad went down regularly for a dip, and he used to gargle with the salt water and then do some breathing exercises, during which he'd say to me, "Breathe, boy, breathe this glorious Luft." I've never forgotten that, and every walk on the Muizenberg prom, and now the Sea Point prom, has some moments when I make a point of breathing that Luft. By the way, in Sea Point, I regularly bump into many former Muizenbergers, notwithstanding our very snobbish attitude as kids and teenagers to those living on the other side of the mountain. Hell, we were so blessed and so privileged to grow up in such a healthy environment. That Cape Doctor, the Southeaster, might have been uncomfortable sometimes, but it kept any smog away. And one could literally rejoice in the healthy pastimes of jogging, swimming, or playing beach bats on the clinically white sands of our never-ending coastline. Walking past Gerald Musicant's Rustenburg Pharmacy, nestled under the iconic Balmoral Hotel, to Norman's for a Coke float, and the Empire Cinema for Saturday morning flicks and comic swaps, and still Jean Tocker to your office, one braced oneself turning Windy Corner. And when I was on my bicycle, which was most of my time when moving around Muizenberg, I thrived on the fight against the wind especially satisfying on gale force occasions. Where else in our beautiful city could kids slip down to the beach for a swim or a game of beach bats before returning home for a quick shower and then going to school? And our very own Sunflay. I loved being at the mouth where it flowed into or was filled by the sea, especially at high tide, particularly spring tide, when the challenge was to stand on the cement path on the inside of the canal walls and jump away just before those mighty waves reached one as they swept along towards the road bridge, crashing into it and surging underneath to force the current across the locks, which eventually collapsed and have never been replaced, around the curve and under the footbridge, bringing fresh seawater to the fish and bird life in the more tranquil upper Flay areas. Or the other challenge of hiring a canoe from Play Waters and waiting on the inner side of the road bridge for those massive waves to emerge and surfing the wave for as long as possible before it lost its momentum. That entire area, which is today still a protected nature reserve, was under threat of development. And I'm very proud that our dad was instrumental, along with other activists, in ensuring that it would remain so forever. Obviously, school and my classmates were a huge part of my life. Moving to Fairway in Yarmouth Road, on the other side of the bridge, just before my bar mitzvah, meant that I now had the Lockage, Rosenberg, Blumenthal, Feinstein, Caston, Derman pack as close neighbors, plus the Musicans, Kays, Hopes, Davises, Silversteins, Israels, Pihas, Liebrechts, Roraways, Myers, Benzakines and Rosens, to Congo to Belgique nearby. When the Beatles hit the charts, I remember Barry Lockage holding a dance evening in the large yard at the back of their house to the fantastic music of the Beatles. Ian Buller Barnett was also a great Beach Bats partner, but I came close to losing my first wife to him whilst I was completing my working, hiking and cycling trip around Europe. On New Year in Hamburg, Germany, I got a phone call to let me know that if I didn't return pronto, Buller might well become my ex-Beach Bats partner together with a potential ex-first wife. My older brother, John, he and Frank are now both resident in London, shared some anecdotes with me. He obviously has a much longer memory than I do. Remember Tok Toki? Knock on someone's front door and run away. There was a book at CNA in York Road called The Decameron, a 14th century book by Boccaccio comprising romantic but rather erotic stories. Apparently, John and his classmates, and perhaps many of you watching today, used to go to it at break to look at the dirty bits. And the book used to conveniently fall open right there because it had been used that way so often. He also remembers playing outside the shul during Yom Tovim and lining up twice at Simchat Torah to get extra chocolates. Reverend Frank used to blow the shofar in shul. Over the years, he unfortunately found it more difficult, going absolutely red in the face, starting and stopping, whilst Rabbi Weinberg to the left of the ark and the three top hats in the president's box silently encouraged him. All eyes were on him, watching, riveted, willing him to get it right. And then a roar of Shekeach as the final Tkiyah blasted upwards through the ceiling to the heavens above. Our attachment to the shul runs deep, so much so that I remarried there, the first wedding in years, according to Cecile Bursky. And by the way, Hedy, again, the Ladies Guild did the catering for us. Speaking of John, he authored the Opera Handbook. And after receiving his doctorate in music at York University, he spent some time as principal of the famous Yehudi Menuhin School of Music in Surrey. And speaking of shul, that memorable Talmud Torah Hall in Wherry Road, rebuilt and renamed as the Herzl Hall, was everyone's bar and bat mitzvah lessons venue. The hall was also our first Beitar Bayit. It was also made famous or notorious, depending on your personal views, by my across-the-road neighbor and chanech, the entrepreneurial Cedric Kushner, who organized socials there. Cedric was the naughtiest guy, but had a huge heart. He became a successful boxing promoter in New York, and when he passed away, his funeral was attended by many of the world's top boxers, trainers, and promoters. I think entrepreneurship courses through our Jewish veins, as we're a very ambitious race. Whilst Henry, or was it Leonard, certainly Cecil Frankel, and their second Muizenberg Boy Scouts group may have undertaken Bobber job, my brothers and I went further. Apart from selling and collecting and selling newspapers and bottles, we devised Services Unlimited, a really noble venture to earn some pocket money. We distributed leaflets to every home we could, certainly well over 100. And we had one successful response. Sarah Sloman, who lived opposite the Flay Road Bridge. She paid us a shilling to mow her lawn. I also sold Richard Eberhard shirts house to house. My best customer was Mr. Bendix of African Electrical in Church Street. Growing up in the 50s, white school children may have been politically unaware. We were fortunate to have a liberal-minded mother who was an early member of the Progressive Party. My dad, who was a founder member of Clovelly Country Club, where I played so much tennis with Barry Lockridge, was a somewhat more conservative businessman. So we had some really fierce debates around the dining room table. But in March 1960, the Sharpeville Massacres raised alarm bells and the government imposed a state of emergency. Now, I remember that particularly well, as Harry Myers ran a dairy somewhere on the Cape Flats. And I recall getting up at 2 a.m. to go and assist him as his employees were on strike. Michael Myers, Barry Zinn, and Roger Kay were also with us. I can't recall who milked the cows, but I do remember sickling with those heavy and freezing cold milk urns. Michael Myers and his wife-to-be Avril were also regular beach bat partners, together with their soon-to-be in-laws Marsha and Travis Abrahams, after Seymour married Yeti. Years afterwards, whenever I popped into their cousin Gerald Musicant's pharmacy, he always asked me if I brought my beach bats with me. That beach, those wide open spaces, was so much a part of our lives that I've always felt sorry for people who haven't grown up at the coast. They've missed out on so much. Helping the fishermen drag in their nets and getting a fish as a reward to take home. Housewives rushing out of their houses to catch the fish cart, blaring its oh-so-iconic horn as the horse clip-clopped along the streets, the driver yelling, "Varsvers, Kinklop, Paris, Gielbeck." And when they were stopped and the bargaining began, "Hoeveel misses koop vandag? Nee, madam, dis nie genoeg. Vandag se catch was te min, so dit kos nou bietjie meer as die ander dag." There was also a fruit and veg cart, though I remember it graduated to an open bucky or lorry, as we called it then. We all tended to socialize with our peers, our classmates, which is natural. but my family was steeped in music, and this influenced my interests in the direction I took, starting at age 9, when I burst into tears whilst listening to the death of Arze in Grieg's Peer Gynt Suite, and my mom solemnly pronounced the prophetic 2 words, "He's ready." That led to piano lessons, and at school, speaking English as it should be spoke, according to my mother's definition of good pronunciation, led to frequently being dragged to the front of the class by Ray Bernstein or Hester Kaplan. Neither of these endeared me to my classmates. I don't know why teens are so judgmental, especially in high school, where I was clearly resented by the guys for not doing cadets, as I took music as a subject for matric and cycled to Fisher twice a week for piano lessons, whilst they, poor guys, had to sweat it out marching around the school grounds. I think Barry Selby and Basil Sachs were ranking machas. And oi, I didn't play rugby. Well, my way of coping with being only on the periphery of my classmates' attentions was to consciously keep in mind my mom's Dale Carnegie training. Act enthusiastic and you'll be enthusiastic, and be positive, which is what I did. And it manifested in my deep love for animals and my participation in the annual speech and drama and piano eisteddfods in Cape Town City Hall. I think I knew the names of most dogs in town. I think this was Rover, who was Barry Lockage's dog. And I got a lot of satisfaction selling Easter stamps for the Cape Cripple Care Society, which launched my civic involvement. I was also the local go-to person for the Seabird Rescue Club of South Africa. That was the predecessor of SANCOB, responsible for rescuing injured seabirds or seals along our coastline from Struntfontein to Simonstown. Before I graduated to driving our Mini, I hitched an aerated box on wheels to my bicycle to transport those injured creatures to the SPCA in Grassy Park. And I also experienced a huge sense of achievement with my music accomplishments, crowned by 3 two-piano orchestral performances with John. Heading up our Beitar Zionist youth movement in Muizenberg and Cape Town and Western Cape as a whole was a genuine passion in my matric and student years, taking over the baton from John, and was really thrilling to see the number of uniformed Beitarim on Friday and Sunday nights attending meetings across all the age groups. At our peak, we took 120 Cape Townians, many of them from Muizenberg, to the annual end-of-year Beitar camps in Port Elizabeth. And many attended our mid-year seminars at what is now the Friends Pre-Primary and Educare Centre in Windermere Road, opposite the relocated Muizenberg High School, where, by the way, that piano, which started it all when Frank turned 13, has been donated by the 3 of us to ensure that it continues in perpetuity to contribute to a musical education for our old school's music students. We all share a common bond, an intense connection with and proprietary love for our village by the sea. The open spaces, the flay, the beach, and our backdrop to it all, the mountain. Up the stairs from the shul, across Boys Drive and a short walk up the mountainside, there's a massive boulder with an uplifting and breathtaking view of the entire village. The flay snaking to the left, False Bay with its endless white-crested waves and deepening azure expanding to the Indian Ocean horizon on the right. And our special smooth-sanded beach and coastline extending ever further towards the Hottentot Holland mountain range above Gordon's Bay to Huncliffe. My mom's and dad's ashes are scattered on that mountainside to forever connect them with their living past, that enriching luft and infinite peace in their beloved hometown. Mine will be too. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Well done, David. I've got quite a few comments. Pretty much, I don't even very just one on mute because there's a bad echo here. Mute all. Okay, so David, I will give people a chance to speak. I just want to say what some of the people are writing. Someone wrote this, which is quite poetic herself. I love David's talk, so charming and full of redolent memories, delicious way of expressing himself. I'm not going to say anything more than that, David. That was exceptional, so interesting. Also, like Barry, like Hedy, so many facts, so many stories, so much insights about life. Thank you so much for that talk. Now I'm going to go in and open up to everybody. Please, if you have any problems with your mic, just, mute yourselves, and we will just say your name so that I can spotlight you. And we'll go for a few minutes just talking and hearing if anyone has anything to say about those things. Okay, I've just unmuted everybody or asked everybody to unmute themselves. Does anyone want? What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute everyone. I'm going to mute everyone. And then if you want to speak, why don't you unmute yourself and talk?
We are able to unmute ourselves, yes, right.
Okay, good. Does anyone want to say
Something
anything
to
in response?
David.
You don't...
Can I say something to David?
Yes, who's that? Is that Batya?
That's Batya. I want to know what he forgot.
Let me just put you as the spotlight. Yes, Batya.
I'm so proud of you, my classmate. That you, my classmate, spoke so beautifully wonderful. Mr. Hillhouse must have done something with you as well. I just want to know why you forgot all about Weary Road. Weary Road was with the Herzl Hall and the Tomatoro Hall. And if you stood in the middle of the road and you shouted Klavias, you could get killed in the rush. But you forgot about Weary Road, didn't you?
Thank you, Batya.
David.
Who's talking? Who's talking?
Mervyn.
Mervyn. Let me just put you on. Yes, Mervyn, go for it.
David, you are absolutely incredible, and so many memories. It was really, really magnificent. Well done. Proud of you, classmate. I won't cry. I won't cry.
Thank you, Mervyn. Thank you. You can cry. Thank you for that comment. Anyone
It's
else?
Monica. Can you hear me?
Yes, Monica.
Monica Jacobson,
Monica
Silverstein. I lived round the corner from you. Do you remember? And you won't believe it, I'm back in Muizenberg, in one of the flats my father built.
Thank you, Monica. Monica is here. She is beloved in our community, and we love you, Monica. Thank you for being here, and I'm glad the technology works. Anybody else want to say anything?
I want to thank the rabbi for organizing the most unbelievable presentations.
Yes, Alan. Thank you, Alan. Okay, we lost Alan's audio, but thank you very much, Alan.
There should be 10 times as many people.
My name is Richard. My name is Richard Stern, Rabbi.
Hey, Richard, let me get spotlight. Yes, go for it.
Everybody's speeches brought back so many memories, but we were doubly blessed, I guess, by being on Beach Road. And Frank Lazarus was one of my, because I'm not quite sure what years we're talking about here, but at 13 years old, all of us, Robbie, Maxwell, Peter, and myself, and Jean, all went to school in Grahamstown. So I guess we missed out on a lot of the shenanigans that were going on in Muizenberg. But my childhood in Muizenberg was a little bit different. My friends were, funnily enough, mostly Jewish, mostly non-Jewish, should I say. Jeffrey Arnold, Doc Sparks, forget the name of the family. They lived just next to Balmoral. She was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen in my life. But the Jewish part of my life was very similar to most of you. We were warriors, baby. I was born in 1937. So my father went off to war and up north. And so my mother and ourselves, we had blackouts. Probably many of you don't remember that, I don't know. But we had blackouts, we had troops that we used to invite in from the street. And my mother used to have to say, that's enough, we're up to 10 people already. You can't invite any more in for lunch. My grandfather, of course, was very involved in Woolworths and many memories of that as well. But I'm amazed at the amount of memories of people. I don't have those kind of memory flashbacks that all of you had. I do remember as Jacob and Joel, so it's Egon Joel and Joel Betty City Hall. I don't know whether you remember that. Some of the things as Jacob Frey, so Senskan Frey, was Frey Betty Falsey Bay. So there are things that said, but having left South Africa in 1957, I believe it was, long time ago, my heart still aches a little bit for Muizenberg and for South Africa, surprisingly enough. I went into agriculture and spent many years on my grandfather's farm, which was called Dimmersfontein in Wellington, which is now owned by David Sonnenberg, and is a very successful winery. Well, I won't bore anybody with other anecdotes. There's lots of anecdotes, naughty and good, both. But it's been a rabbi very heartwarming to see all these people from my childhood. And at some point, maybe I'll be brave enough to actually write something down. Mask Theatre, which my father started, is still going, not so strongly anymore. Some financial problems there, but it's still in existence. I believe the Muizenberg Secondary School is still opposite where Rob Motors used to be. And I planted a tree there many years ago. Probably not alive anymore. And our old house, Shelver Beach Road, Muizenberg, on the corner, Main Island Beach, is now an office building. But it still stands, green shutters and a red roof as identity. And the putt-putt, of course. I don't know whether any of you know the story about they wanted to build that water slide in front of Shelver. And my father donated the park in front of Shelver so that they couldn't build the water slide. Subsequently, it was put in the parking lot. And the memories of the Flays swimming under the bridge and nearly drowning is very alive. We spent a lot of time in the water, surfing, body surfing, and running home when the clock struck 6 on the tower, in the hospital, in the railway station, so we wouldn't be late for dinner. And that's about all. I can remember a lot more, but I think I've said my piece.
This is the end. And these
Thank
are
you,
the
Rick.
people
Thank
from
you
all over
so
the
much.
world. They've come
I'm going to go to Tandy.
Hearing a few things.
Okay.
Hi, thanks, Ryan. It's been so lovely to listen to all your memories. And what really strikes me is that they're not just your memories. So I wanted to thank all of you for taking care of Muizenberg so that little old us, myself and my siblings and my peers, were able to enjoy Muizenberg just as much as you did when you were kids or teenagers or adults. I'm sure that, like me, there are millions of grandchildren or great-grandchildren even doing exactly the same things, perhaps not as freely, but you know, my grandparents, my father's parents, David Lazarus's parents, lived in Yarmouth Road. My mother's parents lived in Dartmouth Road. Monica Jacobson moved to Pretoria, and she took me for years for speech therapy. It's one of the reasons I'm able to speak to you now. We had two sides of the beach, because there was the Lazarus side and then there was a Katzman side. I've been to the, Rustenburg chemist. Everything that all of you have mentioned is quite incredible that it does appear to be timeless. And I know that names of places have changed. Certainly the whole look of Muizenberg is very different to my little childhood, girly days in sitting watching the fishermen, and with my brother trying to compete with them. I still have no idea why anybody chooses to sit for a whole day waiting for a bite. It'll never be my relaxation. But I'm just so thankful that it's still there. It's still there, and my nephews love to go and play putt-putt at the same putt-putt that's been there since I can first remember. And the fish and chip shops is different, but the beach, all of those core places that all of you have mentioned are all still there and still incredible. So thank you for
Thank you very much. Thank you. David mentioned, I think it was Reverend, who used to gargle with salt water. I don't, but I do, consume lots of salt water while surfing. So that still goes on, David. Anyone else want to say anything else? Last two comments, and I think we're going to call it a day. There's Terrell.
Yes, hi. I was Terrell Sachs. I saw my brother was on earlier from San Diego. But David, I just wanted to say how amazing it was to hear all of that. I mean, you were certainly one of my childhood heroes as the head of Beitar, and that Herhoek in camp was amazing. I mean, that photo, we've all got that photo, so it was an incredible thing. But my mom died last year, Claire Sachs, and they had the Tonys and then the United Building Society in Muizenberg for many, many years. And when she died, obviously we went through all her papers and we found the most amazing things, including incredible photographs and the Muizenberg news from when my dad died. Just afterwards, Emil Rees wrote an amazing eulogy for my dad. So I think going through all of that stuff and remembering all of those days, and what an amazing, amazing place it was to grow up. And I agree that I think that most of us just have had such an incredible journey from the wonder of being able to have that kind of camaraderie and that group. I was amazed to hear there were only 250 families. It felt to me like the whole of Muizenberg was Jewish when I was growing up. Certainly all the stores and Shagam's pharmacy and all of those things. There just were so many businesses in Muizenberg that were owned by Jewish people. I'm amazed, but I can only agree. I mean, how would we know? So my brother is David Sachs. He lives in San Diego. I think somebody put that up. So thank you. And thank you, Rabbi, for organizing this. I think it's incredible. So thank you so much.
My condolences to you for last year, and with pleasure. Anyone want to say one last comment before we go? There will be another 2 sessions of this. So don't have to get everything in now, but if anyone wants to say one last thing, we've got time for one last one.
Can I say something?
Sorry, who's that? Sorry, who is that?
Very quickly, Hedy. I'd say thank you to you, Rabbi.
Oh, sure. With pleasure, Hedy. Thank you, everybody. I think we'll call that a day. Thank you to our wonderful 3 speakers. It was great. It was great to hear everybody's comments. And there'll be another 3 speakers, maybe 4 speakers next week. So look forward to that. Everyone have a Shavua Tov, a great week. And above all, stay healthy. God bless.
Hi, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Everyone can say
all the best, and thank you very much to everybody. It's fantastic.
Thank you to all the talkers.
Thank you. Hedy, thank you.
Rabbi.
Very thank you. Stunning Rabbi. Kol hakavod. Cheers, everybody.
David, you did a great job.
Thanks, Michael. Hello.
Hello, Colin.
Yeah. It's off.
It's there, Michael. You're still on screen.
Still there. David, Avril sends a love to you.
Tell Avril said love too.
Okay. Cheers, guys. Bye. Thank you.
Cheers all. Bye.
Okay.